All right, everyone. This is Shafqat speaking. First of all, I just wanted to welcome everyone. I know we have a lot of attendees here live. We will be recording everything, so if you're listening to the recording, thank you for making the time for us. I'm really excited. I think we have a great webinar. We're going to try and keep it conversational. We're going to do our best to make it fun as well, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. I think during this pandemic, we also have sat through so many of these webinars that they start blurring one into the other, and we'll try and make it different. My name is Shafqat. I'm the CEO of Welcome. We're a marketing orchestration platform. This webinar is not about our software, although we will show you a little bit of how we use our software at the end. I'm just going to move forward. All right, and this is me, and I'm joined by Marcia. I'm super excited. She's one of the smartest analysts that I've met, that I've come across, covering marketing ops, covering some of the most kind of important topics of marketing today, like agile marketing. So Marcia, do you want to just say hi? You're probably furious.
Good morning and good afternoon and hello.
And you can think of us as your personal marketing trainer. So
without the spandex.
Without the spandex, although I love this GIF. I will say I have a team. In fact, it's a person on our team, Lisa, who's the queen of finding the funniest GIFs that we'll fill today's presentation with. But so you can think of us as your marketing trainers. And what does that actually mean? We're here to help you meet your goals. So, when we asked a lot of marketers, what are your goals? And this is what we've heard, right? We survey marketers probably every 2 or 3 weeks. You may have seen it, and we've heard them say, 47% say, we want to free up time from my team so they can drive results. And 81%, 4 out of 5 marketers say they need to be able to produce campaigns and content faster. And so the summary is that, they want to do more, they want to move faster, yet half of marketers say they spend, all their time doing planning and coordination. They spend a lot of time doing what we call work about work. And 81% of marketers say they want to measure business impact, but only a third actually say they can do it well. So what we found is they want, and marketers like you want speed, and you want to free up your time so you have more capacity in order to do actual marketing, so that you can meet your goals and you can demonstrate impact to your team, to your bosses, to the company. But let's be honest. It's tough to move fast and tough to gallop towards your goals when you're being weighed down, right? And you're saddled with all sorts of things, whether it's very strict, like company hierarchy of kind of how your marketing team is organized, which often means silos, like you may be organized into channel teams where you have your email team, your social team, your web team, and this hierarchy and these silos make it very difficult. On top of that, there's probably some sort of never-ending review process. And then there's meetings upon meetings upon meetings, right? And so all this stuff just makes it harder and harder to get campaigns and content out the door. And instead, like what we're not doing is we're not addressing like the real root of the problem, which could be kind of how your marketing team works, or potentially your marketing team culture or your whole organization culture. And instead of addressing the roots, what we do is, we hear about marketing team reorgs all the time. And really all that means is we're like shuffling, the process around at best. It could be like shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. Like we really don't believe reorgs help. In fact, often what happens is we just pile on a bunch of new things that you really don't need into your process, right? More meetings, more check-ins, more status reports, more PowerPoints, and like it's just adding to your already overflowing day. And so what, to us, that's like empty calories. If we're your marketing trainers, this is not how you're going to solve the actual problems of getting in better health or better shape. And there's all sorts of, fads that we notice, things that feel exciting that you should try. And we think reorgs are essentially the fad diets of marketing. And there's been, quick fixes promised over time, over the years. And frankly, none of these quick fixes work. Apologies if you've tried it. And so, what we think is that there's an opportunity to maybe, instead of doing a reorg, it's what we call an unorg. So it's to undo what's holding your marketing team back and just rethink kind of how you're working fundamentally and addressing the root issues. In fact, we've done a whole series of these undo webinars where, things that you can do to unclutter, undo, simplify your marketing, where you can watch, you can watch all of these webinars on our website, including this one. Everything's recorded. The slides will be up on our site as well. So this is number 3 in our undo series, all helping you kind of lose the process, lose the weight, keep it off, and actually end up in a healthy state. So, we are excited to share some of these tips with you. A lot of it centers around how you can sprint faster, how you can embrace agile, both like how you can be agile small a, but also more importantly, how you can practice agile methodology, so capital A. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Marcia, who, as I mentioned, is the best in the business when it comes to these topics. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I think, Marcia, you're going to start sharing your screen. If
Absolutely. Can everyone see?
Sure can.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Shafkat, thank you so much for the nice introduction. And as your fellow co-trainer, I feel like I should have some great jazzercise music or something going here. Let's warm up and kind of move in here. Well, I love the unorg or the undo series that Welcome has been doing, because it's such a great way to reframe your thinking and get excited and get energized. And so we've absolutely embraced that today. And we talk about, we want to be able to sprint like a startup. Wouldn't we all want to be some sort of lean, mean, running, powerful marketing organizational machine? But sadly, often the reality, especially after a year of pandemic, looks a lot more like this. This is not a photo of me, but it might as well be. Pizza and Netflix has been my friend in the last few months. I don't think I'm alone. But there are ways to move from sort of this to the other state where we'd like to be. And to do that, you really need a strategy. So if we're playing with our training approach, we want to lose that process weight, there's things we can do. We have choices. We can do nothing, and a lot of us, that's a strategy. You don't tend to see fabulous results that way. You could do something a little more extreme, like I'm going to get some kind of complicated gastric bypass surgery or get a stomach band or something. Wow, that's expensive and tends to be a little bit of an overkill for the problem for most of us. But the good news is there are lots of strategies out there that are much more viable. You can make some small changes. And as you do that, you're going to get sustained incremental results as you build new habits. You can also put yourself on some kind of, equivalent of a weight loss program. And those can be great. They give you a lot of tips and tricks. You stick with it. And before you know it, boom, you've achieved a goal. And there's also the opportunity, for the equivalent of starting an exercise program. And again, you can start small, but if you stick with it, that's going to help you gain that strength, that speed, that endurance. And what we're going to focus on now is sort of 3 strategies that really align to that. Make small changes, do that weight loss program, start some exercise, but in terms of getting you to that sprinting like a startup, being more nimble, being more adaptable and agile. And those 3 strategies are really to make some process improvements. Take what you're currently doing today, make some of those small, sustained incremental changes. And it doesn't sound glamorous, but it is going to get you to a point where you're in better shape. There's also kind of analogous to our weight loss goal. We have the ability to do some adjustment to team structures, not a fad diet, not a reorg, but there are adjustments and ways that you can change how you approach teams, which again is going to give you that that loss of process weight and that increased speed. And finally, there is the opportunity to adopt and embrace agile methodology within marketing, which again, it's a learning, it's a series of disciplines, and with practice, you will find you get very, very good at this. And I have seen some phenomenal results from organizations that have adopted agile. So, everyone lace on your trainers and do a little bit of a stretch, and let's move on into this. So if we start with our first improvement, we're gonna work on some process improvements, some sustained incremental change. And this is sort of the equivalent of instead of maybe taking your car everywhere, you're gonna go for some walks, you're gonna eat some healthier snacks. And again, doesn't seem like drastic changes, but wow, you can see some phenomenal results from it. Let's pause for a moment here and talk about process, because when you're in a marketing organization, somehow process has just become this horrible, dirty word. And in fact, I always joke, if you want to see a group of marketers flinch, just say process at them and watch them all twitch. But process really doesn't have to be this hard. All process is is simply a defined, it's a defined and repeatable set of steps that are performed by a group of people and to achieve a specific goal. And what process gives an organization, in spite of the dirty connotation it has, is that it does establish work ownership and governance. People have a set of responsibilities and tasks that they work on in a process to achieve an end result. It allows you to achieve some very specific objectives. It does clarify those responsibilities for people who are involved in a process. This is an important one for a lot of companies too. It ensures that work meets standards and timelines, whether that's a brand standard or you have service level agreements for specific handoffs, or say you're in a more highly regulated industry and you have to have an audit trail, or you have to back up what the content, the offers you say in marketing. All of this is important, but ultimately the most important thing about process is that it's designed to deliver value to customers. Just pause and think about that for a moment. You may think, wow, if I'm doing some sort of silly form to request budget, how is this helping a customer? Well, it's helping customers internal to the company, and ultimately it's helping your external customers, because the work that marketing is producing, the digital interactions, the setup for live interactions, the content, the messaging, all of this is consumed by your buyers and ultimately your customers. It's all extremely valuable. And process is helping you do this in a better, more aligned fashion. So it's very important. That doesn't mean that it's perfect. And in fact, when people flinch about the concept of process, it's because it's, oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. And process does become an issue because it's often done very badly in organizations. It's poorly designed, or it's really not serving its intended purpose. It's not adding value for customers. It's sort of ticking a bunch of boxes for someone internally. Processes very quickly get out of date, and they're often not really well maintained. They often can be, optional or onerous, too many steps, not really adding value. And you also have problems where they're not communicated or people aren't trained on them. I mean, how many of us as marketers have sat down and joined a new company and been told, oh, here's clear instructions on how to get this done, or how to request this, or how to ask for some new creative? We're not. We're sort of dumped into an organization and told, figure it out. So it's not very user friendly. So there's definitely areas for improvement, all of which can be beneficial to gaining that speed and strength and agility within your marketing organization. So what can you do to improve process? There's some simple kind of 3-step process right here to think about. The first one is documentation and communications. Really easy, publish some how-tos, publish some checklists, make it clear for people that, hey, if you need to get this or request that, here's what you do. Most people want to follow the right process. It's just frustrating when you can't because that information's not available. I work with a lot of clients who are trying to produce really good intake forms or request forms for process, or scale playbooks to make sure people know how to get things done quickly and in the right way. Calendaring, that's a huge topic for clients where they really want to know, what's coming up ahead? How do I respond to it? And, take the time to train people on your process. Again, no one knows it magically. Audits and process optimization is another easy step. It's very straightforward if you are hearing complaints about a process, like, oh, it takes us forever to get a webinar ready, or, oh, it takes us forever to get email out the door. Ask questions. Sit down with people involved in the process. It doesn't have to take a huge amount of time. You can come out of it with a lot of really valuable information where you can find that, hey, maybe our intake form is broken, or we're not asking the right questions, or maybe we need to set our schedule at 2 weeks because we're not getting enough upfront content information. And really just find out where the problems are occurring so that you can address them. Another great way to think about process optimization, boys say that 3 times fast, is to really make sure people understand their roles and responsibilities in the process. This idea of a RACI model, or again, kind of a checklist of who does what, that's going to help streamline things. If people aren't clear about their role, how are they supposed to be able to do it? And finally, there are things that you can do in terms of automation and or some additional staffing to help process run much better in your organization. We see a lot of wonderful vendors such as Welcome that offer you the ability to automate or simplify, streamline some manual process. And that's a great, if you can embrace that and do that, especially with people working in distributed environments, that's a huge help. And I'm also seeing a trend where organizations, especially marketing operations teams, are beginning to stand up and centralize project management or program management offices. And that's really to make sure that people know how to navigate process. Somebody is managing work that's coming out. There is some structure to how the work is broken down and communicated. And it's all really important. These are simple fixes you can do to make your marketing organization work better. And I'll show you a couple of quick examples of these. So one of the things we publish at Forrester is some guidelines on how to do process mapping and documentation. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as a table or a matrix diagram such as this, where you simply say, here's the steps for the process, and here's the things we need to start it off. Here's the actions that have to be taken. And here's the outputs, the clear deliverables that we need for each stage in the process. Doesn't have to be fancy, but if somebody had this pinned to their wall, it would be a lot easier to navigate a process than, run around and ask 5 people how it gets done. Request forms or process intake. This is an area where we constantly see pain points. Is it clear? Is the form easily found? Are you collecting the information you need to move on to the next step? Are you collecting too much information? Is the person making the request able to fill this out? All of these are important questions to ask. And again, you can really streamline down, am I getting the right information from the right person at the right time to get this work done and keep things moving?
Hey, Marcia, there is a really good comment about intake forms, which I thought maybe I'll just
oh, please do. Stop me.
Here, where I think Maggie wrote, we found that forms sometimes are more harm than good if people don't know what happens after you fill them out, response expectations, etc., which I think is exactly what you're saying. If you're going to have a good intake process, the SLAs need to be very specifically agreed upon. So the turnaround time, number of cycles, but also I think providing transparency to the submitter, we found is a huge benefit that marketing organizations see, because intake forms often used to be like a black hole. Like you submit something through an intake process and then you have no idea where it's gone, when am I going to get an update? So the more transparency you can provide to the submitter, even post-submission, I think the better the process gets.
Oh my goodness, plus 1,000, Shafkat, absolutely. It's kind of like that annoyance, when you leave a voicemail or you dial someone and you get their message and it's like, yeah, leave a message, I promise I'll get back to you. And they don't. It's frustrating. And yeah, absolutely, there needs to be that transparency. We will get back to you in 1 business day to let you know the status of your request, or, call our marketing help desk and you can get information, or log into our system and you'll see where it is in the approval queue. It's really frustrating if you put in a request and you're trying to follow the process and it just goes into a black hole. Really glad you raised that point.
Well, credit to Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie. Kind of moving on to process audits, there's some simple questions that you can ask, and you do get a lot of rich feedback, which starts to pinpoint where in your process are there gaps, where are there redundancies, where are things breaking down, what are things we can do to make this better. Same thing about publishing, clear roles and responsibilities for different steps in the process. Who does what? Who owns what? Who needs to be informed? Who's an approver? Who's driving the process? All important things to have clarity on. And also there's those opportunities for automation. And when you start working with a vendor and you're looking at automating some process, putting something like this together, a workflow diagram, is incredibly valuable because it's going to help the vendor to automate your process effectively. And it's also going to force you to really take a hard look at the process to say, are there too many steps? Are there things that we can delete? What's a bottleneck in this process? Because I see this a lot, and Shaf, you probably see this as well. People invest in a tool and they think, well, this is great. We're going to have this process fixed because we have a tool. And you can automate a bad process just as easily as automating a good process. So this is really a time to take a hard look at, is it the right one? Is it addressing our customer needs? Is it as streamlined as we can make it before we automate it? Because you don't want to make a bad process just run faster.
Totally agree.
And the tool doesn't do it by magic. There's still thought that goes into this.
Now, process and culture are two things that no amount of software is going to fix.
Ooh, I'm going to steal that quote someday. I will attribute it to you, but that's a good one. The kind of a net of where there's a lot of breakdowns in terms of process. And again, this is things I see over and over again in conversations I have with Forrester clients, is that, companies are so dynamic and they're changing constantly, and there really isn't a thought to audit or look at processes. Someone's always taking a look at the marketing tech stack. Somebody's taking a look at the headcount and the people. No one's ever really thinking about process. So one of the things we always encourage folks to do is, hey, when you're starting your annual planning, take a fresh look at your process. Have a major triggering event. You've done an acquisition, or you're merging, or you're spinning something off, or you're setting up a new go-to-market. Take a look at process. Can you support it? Because usually that's where the bulk of the pain points occur in a marketing organization. Drive for that role clarity. Who's involved? What's expected of them? What information is needed? Think about your process handoffs and service level agreements. The vast majority of marketing organizations, the only process that has any kind of service level agreements is your lead management or your opportunity management, or what we would call the waterfall. There could be other processes out there where you want written service level agreements. If you're going to put in a request for new creative, we want to hear back in a day, is this approved or not, or how long is it going to take? That transparency. Also make sure that there's clear inputs and outputs. I see this a lot where people work through a process and everyone's not quite sure what the end deliverable should look like. And make sure that there's templates when available. Don't make it a guessing game. Make it easy for the folks who are doing the work. Do what you can to simplify reviews. I know so many processes get sucked into the whirlpool of death of reviews, and it's an area where you, again, can do some quick fixes. Do people have clear guidelines on what they're supposed to be looking for in the review? What are they responsible for? It's great if somebody comes in and says, well, I don't like this because it's purple. Well, I'm not sure we asked you for that opinion. Is it spelled correctly? Is it compliant with company brand? Is it meeting the creative brief? Is it, is the stakeholder happy? Is it something the customer is going to respond to? These are the kind of questions that should be asked, not just let me throw an opinion in just to show I participated in a review. And again, process governance, it's something that's not always very clear in a lot of marketing organizations, but there should be a sense of who owns it. If there's a problem, to whom do you escalate? Again, basic things that can make your processes work better. All right, so we're going to open this up because we definitely want this to be interactive today, and really just wanted to throw it open if there were questions, and also if people, had anything that they wanted to share about challenges within their organization when it comes to process, or if you've attempted any of these process quick fixes, little small sustained incremental changes, and what have the results been?
So Marcia, I'll try and MC the chat since there's a lot of stuff happening there. Love the interactivity. I think there is a couple of points made around agile light, quote unquote. So, what is the right amount of process? How can you, I think someone made the point that they love that you're talking about process because there's a misconception that agile means no process, which is so I don't know if you have a comment on that. There is one other question around this concept of the marketing operations office. I think you may get to that in the next section, but maybe those are the 2 points that I've picked out of the chat.
Absolutely. Well, let me address the first one. Agile, yes, it is a common misconception. A lot of people think, hey, we're agile, we don't need to plan and we don't need process. Wrong answer. When you embrace Agile, capital A Agile as the proper methodology, which we will touch on in a few minutes, it actually is iterative planning and constant iterative process improvement. Process doesn't go away. It becomes a focal conversation of your Agile teams who are always asking, how did the process work this last cycle? What can we do to make it better? So it's constant iteration, constant thinking about it, constant improvement. So no, the dream of a processless, boy, say that 3 times fast, marketing organization is simply that. It's a dream. There is always going to be some degree of process. The challenge, the trick, the balancing act is to make sure the process is serving the marketing organization, not the other way around. So it is, I think it's a topic that marketing organizations need to talk about more. If you see a lot of things, like if your company is doing regular, employee pulse surveys, using a tool like Glint or something like that, I've seen a lot of those. And there's always comments about, this is broken. Why does this take so long? And everyone's willing to talk about putting in a new tool or talk about, when we have headcount, we'll hire or we'll do some changes. It just seems like process is the third rail. No one wants to talk about it. And, by facing it head on and addressing it, you can fix a lot of pain points in marketing. Let me pivot over and talk about the PMO office. It's really interesting. It is definitely something that I'm seeing more and more clients embracing. The logic, the flow of this kind of goes like this, where you have your marketing teams, they start to get bigger, the company scales, things get more complex, the work increases, and the old routine of everybody kind of project manages everything really stops working because, project management is a very specialized skill set. And eventually teams start to get a little frustrated and they bring on somebody to, manage things, a project manager, a traffic coordinator. I've seen a variety of titles. And say you have one in the creative team, and then somebody adds one in the content team, and then, we need one on the web team. And pretty soon you've got pockets of people who are doing this job, but there's no standardization. Every team is doing its own thing. They may have their own ways of managing. They may have their own tools to help manage. And then the company hits a certain point of complexity, and it's like, we're trying to get people to work together, and we're doing something that cuts across all marketing, say a big product launch, say we're rolling out a big new campaign. And we've got 15 quote unquote project managers running around, but nobody's owning the overall effort and everyone's doing everything differently, not really helping. So what we're seeing is a lot of marketing operations organizations stepping up and saying, okay, you know what, we're going to either, physically have them report to the ops team, or they're going to, virtually report. And we're going to put some structure in place. We're going to centralize a tool for project management across all marketing. We're going to adopt some methodology, whether it's a waterfall approach, whether it's an agile approach. We're going to have all the project managers speaking the same language, using the same tools, doing the same thing, and sharing best practices, and starting to get to consistent templating, to consistent schedule management, work backs, and all marketing is going to be using the same. And hey, then we could cross-train and we could pull expertise from one team to share with another team. And suddenly you've got this phenomenal energy and scale, and you can spin things up across marketing like a launch or like a new cross-marketing campaign. And you've got people who can pull resources. They know the different teams involved. They have common project management expertise. It becomes very, very powerful. And I am seeing this type of PMO office being stood up in smaller marketing organizations, and some organizations, SAP comes to mind, have an actual, senior vice president of marketing, the marketing program office. And it is a big team, and it is an important function of the marketing team to manage this. So something to think about as your organization, if you're starting to hit some of those scaling challenges, having this as a centralized team and putting some consistent process management, project management across marketing, it's very powerful.
It's also potentially a way to bust some of the silos. If you do have a traditional hierarchical kind of structure that you're not going to be able to change overnight, having these some sort of cross-functional team, this idea of squads and chapters, if you want to look that up for folks on the line, there are ways that you can kind of within the constructs of older hierarchical structures use this PMO concept or this marketing operations this office concept to bust through some of those silos. We should probably keep moving. I just realized there's a lot of questions coming in. By the way, for any questions that we can't answer, Marsha and I will try and answer them post webinar as well. So we're going to save everything in the chat. So Marsha, back to you.
Fantastic. Really, really great questions. All right. Well, if we're feeling limber now, we're going to move on to our next strategy here, which is we're going to adjust that team structure. We're gonna lose some of that dead weight, that process weight, and think about how to move nimbly. And Shafkat, you just did a beautiful job teeing this up, which is the idea that with your people resources, there are different ways that you can structure and do this. Again, without going to that funky fad reorg, not terribly effective. There are things you can do to fix the basics with your team. You can start to set up some centralized groups, just like we mentioned about the PMO office. You could set up shared services groups. You can have centers of excellence. We see a lot of people doing that around demand teams. But there's some things you can do there. You can also, do a thoughtful restructure of your team. There are some that are effective, but we're trying to stay away from those, ooh, we're having a problem, let's just do a quick reorg mentality. What I do want to spend the time on today, though, is thinking about how do you do some dynamic resource mobilization? Because this is really powerful. And this is what Shafkat was just referring to about things like squads. There's teams that you can pull together without disturbing the hierarchy of your organization that get to move faster and get that work done. So there's a really powerful concept out there called the network-driven marketing organization, or the network-driven organization. And the idea here is that you want to move from kind of the traditional business hierarchy, which honestly came directly from military experience, where you've got a really rigid chain of command, information flows up and down the organization, vertically, and things are very structured, and everyone has clear sense and purpose, and they know to whom they report, but it slows things down. And we're in such an environment these days of speed where this just doesn't work. You can't wait for decisions to go up the chain and go down the chain. You miss opportunities that way. It's really frustrating. So the idea is that you can start to move from a single rigid hierarchy and instead move to kind of a team of teams mentality. And I will have to give a shout out here to Shafkat. There is a book called Team of Teams, which I hadn't read yet, and he pointed me at it, and it's fantastic. But the idea is that instead of having this rigid hierarchy, you're putting together lots of small teams where they have kind of that cross-functional expertise that is needed. And then those teams are all motivated to work on shared goals, because you don't want to just build new silos. You also are allowing the decision-making to be driven down to the level where it makes sense for the organization. So instead of, hey, we have an opportunity here to potentially do a great new campaign that's going to take out a competitor that's annoying us, instead of waiting 6 weeks for it to go up the chain and have people debate it and then come back down the chain with a yes or no, these teams are empowered to say, hey, if you see an opportunity, go act on it. Yeah, there'll be some mistakes made, but the worst mistake is standing still. So the idea is to mix up your organization, pull people from different areas of expertise. Maybe you've got a digital marketer. Maybe you have somebody who's a really big demand expert, somebody who's good with the content, somebody who's a domain expert for some problem that you're trying to solve. And these teams work together. and they're focused on a mission. They do have that cross-disciplinary mix of skills, and they're self-directed. They can act. They're empowered to do that act. And this becomes an incredibly powerful concept, and you can still retain some of that hierarchy. You could have someone sitting on a network team who technically reports to a VP of content or the VP of growth marketing, but they are working cross-functionally with their peers at this team level to get things done, to make decisions, to get work done. And they're sharing knowledge. They're actively breaking those silos down across marketing. It's incredibly powerful. And we see this interpreted in lots of different ways and names. If you do a search on, small team thinking or some of these terms, there's a lot out there. You hear people talking about cells or organizing by pods or squads. I've seen swarm teams get assigned to swarm a problem and fix it. Tiger teams are set up to address challenges. I'm working with one client who's deliberately structured marketing in what they call value creation teams. And all of these teams really share a lot in common, whatever they're called. They're autonomous. They are made of cross-functional skill sets that are complementary. Everybody has a shared purpose, and they're all very focused on what can we do to address a need or solve a problem for a customer. And they become extremely powerful. Instead of a collection of silos, your marketers are building relationships across the organization. You can have non-marketers sit on these teams. You're exchanging knowledge. People are getting, the opportunity to hone their creative thinking, their decision-making skills. It's really powerful. And it allows these organizations to sprint like a startup. You're suddenly closer to the needs. You've got the authority to make some decisions, to test out ideas, to take risks. It becomes incredibly powerful. And there's some, really great scenarios where you can apply this team of teams, this network approach. I've seen organizations very successfully spin up temporary teams. It can be for things like a new event or for a product launch. I'm sure there was a lot of this work happening this time last year when we all started going into lockdown and everyone went, oh my gosh, we can't do physical events. I know the company I work for, we spun up a small team to address how do we take a major event from physical to digital in a 6-week time frame. And we threw a bunch of smart people at the problem and said, you guys own it, make the decisions, make it happen. And it was incredibly successful. I've seen people spin this up for competitive response, for dealing with immediate problems, really useful. It becomes even more powerful if the teams are sort of semi-permanent or much more enduring. Again, you can spin things up. We're launching a significant new campaign. I work with a client in the life sciences space. COVID hit, all of a sudden they had huge opportunity and they decided they needed to spin up a campaign quickly to address the needs of medical lab managers and research lab managers. And it was incredibly effective. They pulled people from across marketing and they basically had the team up and running in a week and a website out like 2 days later. It was unbelievable. But you can also see some marketing specialty areas like we're going to do some M&A integration. Let's spin up a team to help address that. Or, hey, we're thinking about doing rebranding. Let's put a team together. Or we're going to open up a new route to market or a new market opportunity. Let's put some smart marketers together to think that through, as well as the classic agile teams. Most of these are semi-permanent. We'll dig into those a little bit in the next section. And some organizations are taking this all the way. I've had a really fascinating conversation about 2-3 months ago with a CMO who decided his experiment with value creation teams was so powerful. He has restructured marketing. It's no longer a hierarchy. It's groups of people assigned to specific customers, specific buyer personas. And that's how marketing is set up. There's a team who looks at this new buyer, another team that looks at another different type of buyer. And their whole purpose is to get as close to that customer and meet their needs from their various skill sets as possible. And we're even starting to see some companies organizing that way. So again, incredibly powerful way to bust those silos, to move faster, to make quicker decisions, and to get the work out that's going to resonate with your audiences. And there are some requirements to make this work. It's the biggest one is really thinking through your leadership. And going back a little bit to the Team of Teams book, there was an Army general who experimented with the idea of these small teams to bust down silos. Not an organization known for flexible thinking. And what he said his biggest shift was that as a leader, he had to think of himself as a gardener, not as a chess master. I can't sit here and dictate all the moves of the board. Instead, I have to set up an environment where there's some fencing, and I'm putting in some rich soil, and I'm watering, and I'm taking care of things, and trying to keep the rabbits out from eating everything. But I've got to let stuff do its thing, and I can't micromanage everything. So it's really the biggest shift to go to that team of teams mentality is stepping back. It's allowing that risk taking. It's allowing these teams to make some decisions and test things. And culture again comes into a very important play in this. So, do you have an organization? Do you have marketing leadership that is comfortable, that is adopting this approach? Step back a little bit, drive some of that decision making down, open up the communication, share knowledge, and be more of that Gardner mindset. If you're willing to try it, again, the results are incredibly powerful. All right, and going to open it up again for some questions. Again, would love to hear from the participants today. Has your organization done any experimentation with small teams, and how's that been working? What have you tried? What's worked? What's not worked? We'd love to hear that. And I know Shafkat, you're a huge proponent of that. Isn't that how you've pretty much organized marketing at Welcome?
Yeah, we love the team of teams concept and having these cross-functional autonomous teams. There's been a lot of good chat that's coming through where people have experimented with it. One question we got is, if it's not their core mission, right? Let's say they're hierarchically organized by as channel teams and it's siloed, but then we're encouraging these cross-functional teams for a product launch or campaign. How do you incentivize people to work on these cross-functional projects? We can't just tell them to work longer hours or overtime. So any tips around that? My answer was that I put into the chat was, it needs to be part of OKRs or goal setting somehow, and leadership have to buy into it. So like at Welcome, as an example, maybe what we would do is, if every individual has 3 OKRs or goals for the quarter, maybe 2 of them are core mission related and 1 is a cross-functional project. I don't know if you have any tips on, and how do you get people to work on these quote unquote projects?
Cross-functional teams. So I love that question. The first thing I would say is, my first reaction when you said it to me was, wow, how do you get people to work on these cross-functional teams if it's not their core mission? And I sort of react to that with like, oh, you mean doing a product launch or helping a customer? That's not your core mission. So I would have a question about, what is my core mission? No, but I absolutely agree with you.
It's a good point. Maybe some of the cross-functional projects, those are the mission of the company, right?
That's kind of my reaction. Like, oh, you're going to tell me that filing expense reports is more important than getting a product launch out the door? Just how my brain works. No, to me, a lot of that cross-functional work should be the core mission, and leadership should be emphasizing that. The other thoughts I have, so absolutely goal setting and incentives is a huge part. Culture is a huge part. The other thing I've seen is that organizations, it's a really interesting way to find out kind of who your high performers are in a marketing organization. Do they embrace it? Are they stepping up and willing to make decisions and taking risks and, showing some leadership at these team levels? So, to me, it's sort of like, wow, this is a great opportunity to get a fresh look at your talent. You can start to drive things like promotions, additional incentives based on, your adoption of your adaptability to these small teams. So those are all things to think about. But, fundamentally, I'd push back on a leader saying, whoa, if helping customers and helping the company succeed isn't my core mission, I think we have a bigger problem.
Totally agree. And Carlos made a good point for folks on these teams. High visibility and high rewards is what he said.
Exactly. Thank you, Carlos. That was saying it much more elegantly than I did.
No, but I think visibility is a big reward in itself. We should keep moving. I know we have the last section, just the time check. There's so much good stuff. We're running a little behind. Maybe if we can do this last section in 7-8 minutes, then I'll wrap up at the end.
I will power through. So this last area, our last strategy, is to really start to think about adopting that agile methodology, because this is our strength training. This is where we're learning some new behaviors, we're practicing them, and we're going to get some great rewards once the initial muscle soreness wears off. A quick touch point here, and Shafkat, you mentioned this earlier in the webinar. There's a difference between Agile with a small a, Agile with a capital A. Agile's a little bit of a victim of its own success. It's got such a great name, and people put all these cool connotations on it, thinking that, hey, we're super fast and we're nimble and we don't need planning or process. We can just go do stuff. That's not Agile. Agile with a capital A is where you actually are adopting an agile mindset. You're expressing that value and principles of agile, and you adopt and have discipline around using agile practices. So this does mean you're going to increase agility continuously over time. And again, the heart of agile is exactly what we just touched on. It's built on the idea of self-directed teams working towards shared goals that they are accountable for. And Agile adopts a mindset of continuous iterative planning and process optimization. It is not process free, it is not planning free. We will touch a little bit more here on what Agile looks like. If you have kind of a more traditional kind of stage gate project management approach, you break things out. We're going to do some research into a problem. We're going to then stop the research and build our requirements. And then maybe we're going to build a solution, and then we're going to test it, and then we'll launch it and measure it. That could take 4 months in this hypothetical example. With Agile, you just start working in short iterative sprints. So you could say, hey, we're going to gather some research, and as we're gathering, we're going to jot some thoughts for requirements, and then we're going to refine that. And then, oh, we've got some initial requirements. Let's build a prototype and see how that works. Okay, let's start some testing now. Okay, let's refine it and do something else. The idea being that as you go through the same time frame, with your traditional approach, you really have one cycle, one big ponderous cycle you're doing. With the Agile approach in this model, you're having 8 tries to add value, to iterate, to test, to try. And you're just delivering value faster, and ultimately you're going to come out with a better set of requirements, a more thorough understanding of the problem. You've tested, you've tried, you've made some mistakes. You're just getting to your end result faster, even though you're doing it in iterative work approach. When we look at what makes Agile successful for marketing, there's a handful of things that really stand out for us. And I'm going to very quickly go through these here. The first is that if you're in an Agile environment, you need to have clear goals. Again, it's small teams working together to achieve things. So marketing, the leadership has to be able to give good goal clarity. What are we trying to accomplish this year? What are we doing to help the company? Let's come up with some ideas, but this is what we're trying to drive toward. And if the ideas don't initially work, the goal isn't changing. We can still try other things, but we need to have clarity about what we're trying to accomplish. It's driven by Agile teams. Again, very similar to the conversation we just had about these, team of teams approach, the network approach. Agile teams are self-directed. They have cross-functional skill sets. They own their own work, and they're aligned. They have a shared vision. They have shared goals, shared purpose. And because they own that work, they get to estimate the size and the complexity. They understand their capacity, what they can accomplish in every sprint cycle. And really they stand up, they own it. And these teams, again, can be, within a specific marketing function or team, they can be cross-functional. And that's when they start getting incredibly powerful. And again, you have Agile teams that work together day in and day out. And then you have Agile teams that spin up, solve a problem, and dissolve. It's just a really powerful way of working together, because people know we're going to come together. This is the problem we agree to solve. We've got the right people in the room. Let's figure out how to get it done. And we'll continually iterate and make sure that that work is improving. Which is another important concept here, is the view of work. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, we have to stand up a brand new website, it's more, okay, this is where we're going. Let's break the work down. Let's figure out what we can start right away, what's ready to go. Let's look at work that's close to ready to go. And we're just going to continually take the most ready to work pieces, iterate them on a sprint, and deliver value at the end of it. So it's not, well, we can't start the website until all of the content is ready. It's like, nope, do we have content for this page? Great. Let's take that. Let's build it. Let's test it. Let's QA it, review it, sign it off. Boom, one page done. On to the next. So it's that getting that flow where you're always bubbling up the work that's ready to be done and getting it done, delivering value, and keep on moving.
I think here the biggest thing is making the shippable units small enough so that you're not dealing with huge epics or large bodies of work that just feel insurmountable, or something that will just take so long before we know the results. Just keeping very small, tight increments of work, I think, is the key.
Absolutely. And that it's ready to be worked on. It's not, oh, we can start this, but we have to stop because we're missing something. It's ready to go. The pieces are there, and you have specific roles on your Agile teams, like your product owner and your Scrum Master, who are making sure that there's always a backlog of work that's ready to go so the team can just take it and run. Evolution is another important aspect of Agile teams. They are always doing special ceremonies such as reviews and retrospectives to figure out, here's what we did. How can we do it better next time? How can we continually improve the process? How can we get better at planning? So that that team learns and grows, and they're able to continually sort of improve their velocity and their capacity. So this idea of ongoing active learning is a very huge element of Agile teams. Planning is another one. So again, I want to thoroughly disabuse everyone of the notion that Agile means no process and no planning. You actually plan more with Agile. We find that, a lot of organizations, like, okay, we've done our annual plans, not enough. We're going to do ongoing plan reviews on a monthly or a quarterly basis. And really effective Agile teams put in additional planning milestones, such as the concept of big room or program incremental planning. And that's where teams come together and say, here's all the work across marketing or this section of marketing. Let's break it all down. Let's all structure it into what we can do in our next couple of, 2-3 sprint cycles. And then we're going to reconvene again and break it all down again to make sure that we're not siloed, that we have that good understanding, and that, we're all aligned on what work needs to go out the door quickly. And again, there are some dedicated roles that help support that across marketing. And then we get to the last one, shareholder transparency. And I know we touched on this earlier, but if Agile is going to work, there has to be clear, ongoing two-way communication. None of this fill out a request form and it goes into a black hole. And in fact, Forrester really recently completed a study in partnership with Agile Sherpas on a whole variety of aspects of what's happening in the state of Agile marketing today. And one of the things we asked was, what are the things that you do to make sure that Agile sticks in your organization, that it becomes an embedded way of working? And the number one answer in our study was to put in a really good Agile project management tool. 55% of our respondents said that that was absolutely critical to make sure that Agile would stick in your organization. And it is a best practice we recommend at Forrester as well. If you're going to do Agile, unify on one good shared marketing project management tool. It is going to make your Agile experience so much more valuable and enduring. And hopefully I brought that in our time frame, Shafkat, but I did want to open it up for people if there was any questions.
You did an amazing job. And I think we're going to talk about some of these, some of the points that you just made, especially around transparency and visibility and how technology can help. So I might just bring us home now. So I'm going to share my screen. I think you may have.
I will do a stop share here as soon as my mouse behaves. There we go.
Awesome. And I think, by the way, the Agile Sherpas report, when does it come out?
We are actually doing the big reveal of some of the top data points tomorrow, and we will start distributing the report initially just to folks who attend our webinar tomorrow, but the doors are opening, the data is coming out.
Great. Well, I think there's some folks who are excited about that. Can you still see my screen?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we're just going to bring it home, I think 3-4 minutes. There was a lot discussed around process and people and culture. And just to be clear, I think no amount of software in the world is going to solve a process, people, or culture problem. But I think software can help accelerate some of the solutions that Marcia talked about. And so just very briefly, I just wanted to show how we do it, even within Welcome. We obviously use our own software for it, but the question around intake forms and work requests came in. And I'll say for us, the biggest change was transparency. And I know that's a cultural comment that has been pervasive through the whole presentation. When a salesperson submits a request, they not only submit it and there's templated forms, but they get to see where is it in the process, where has marketing picked it up, has marketing started working on it, what is the SLAs, so they get full transparency. Yet marketing gets to set the priorities. Marketing gets to set up the rules so that it's routed correctly. And so this has been transformational for us because it's also provided a level of transparency to answer the problem. Well, what is marketing working on anyways? Like, how many times have you heard the business person or salesperson say that? Now, anyone at our company can just look into the work request queue and see all the kind of ad hoc work that marketing is bombarded with, and it's fully transparent to the whole company. The other thing we did was templatize all of our playbooks. So every time we were in a webinar or a product launch or a new web page, we realized like everything could just be set up once, templatized, including the brief kind of fields, the tasks, the milestones, even the SLAs. And now we've created these playbooks that we can just clone so that every single time we have to run one of these plays, we're no longer manually trying to do everything through either copy and paste or trying to remember, shoot, what are all the steps for a webinar? Did someone send the invites? What about the landing page? Did that get built? All of that is now automated. As we mentioned, we just copy and go. It's perfectly replicated, so we don't have to worry about missing steps. Just reduces the friction and allows the marketers to focus more on the actual marketing. When it comes to Big A Agile, we are using it for planning our sprints, managing our backlog. We have Kanban boards in here that we use. Now, one thing that I'm excited by is we're actually adding more and more functionality that's very purpose-built for Agile Marketing Capital A, which is the notion of epics and sprints, the being able to assign story points, being able to do a retrospective or run your actual daily stand-up using our software. So we're adding a lot more kind of purpose-built capital A Agile functionality, but really tailored towards marketing. So that's something that we're excited by. And the final thing is just making sure the shared goals are visible. All of our campaigns ladder up to kind of the strategic campaigns, ladder up to goals so that everyone knows what they're working on and why they're working on it. And again, this is all transparent for the whole organization. So whether you're running, a small little startup, 5 people in a garage, or a massive enterprise marketing team, we think like having the right technology, having the right process, having the right culture can help you sprint, no matter kind of what the size of the team. So I think we're going to leave it there. We covered so much. Marcia, thank you again for all of your insights. There's so much good material. And for the panelists, I love the interactivity. I loved the chat, the things that are working, not working. We're going to download this chat and potentially we may kind of summarize everything and send it out to all the recipients if that's helpful. And if you had any unanswered questions, we'll certainly do that. And by the way, if you go to welcomesoftware.com, you can try out our product for free. And we have completely free version. Set up some time through the product for a 30-minute session if you want, and someone can walk you through like all the ways that Agile can be implemented through the software tool. So we can specifically do that. And send me an email if you want the book, Team of Teams. Happy to send that to you as well. I put my email in the chat above. It's my first name, Shafqat, at welcomesoftware.com, and I'll send you a copy of the book. It's one of my favorite books. thank you again, everyone. Marcia, thank you for doing this with us. It was awesome. The feedback has been great already from the chat.
Fantastic. Well, my pleasure. Always delighted to be on a conversation with the great folks at Welcome.
Awesome. All right. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you.